Buju, wago shindugu migizi indodem, gazaga squaji mekag indun jaba. Today I'd like to share a really important, although simple, cultural concept that Anishinaabe people have carried for a long, long time. And it's easiest to understand this by looking at some basic Ojibwe words. When we look at our terms of relation, we actually have 7 degrees of separation. So nin is the Ojibwe word for me, myself, and I. And then when you go younger than that, you get nini janasug, which means my children. So that would be Ngwizisug, Nindanasug, my sons, my daughters. That's the next line of separation. When you get to grandchildren, then Nojisheg. And when you get beyond that, you get Indaanikobijigan. And then when you look on the other side of that, people older than us, Ninigiugug, my parents. So that would be Ninga, my mother, Nos, my father, and there are other words too. And then a generation beyond that, you have grandparents, Nimishomisug, my grandfathers, Nokomisug, my grandmothers. And beyond that, we have Indaanikobijigan. So the word at the end of the line for great grandchildren and great grandparents, it's actually the same word. And what that means, the word Indaanikobijigan actually means my line. And so we look at ourselves connected in a line across 7 generations. So a lot of times you may hear people speak to this concept by saying things like, we are supposed to think in terms of 7 generations. How will this affect my grandchildren's children's children's children? When we make decisions today, how is whatever I'm deciding today, whether, it's how I spend my money, how I live my life, what kind of house I'm going to live in, what kind of decisions I'm going to make about what do I want to do with my life? How do I want to spend my time? Do I go to ceremony? But as we think about the consequences of our decisions, whether they have to do with our relationships, our friendships, the environmental impacts of how we live, we should think in terms of 7 generations. 7 generations into the future, chances are no one's going to know my name. But the impacts for building positive mental health, positive physical health, for having an impact on things that are much bigger than any one person. Like I spend a lot of my energy working on things like Ojibwe language and culture revitalization, and I believe in these things. I enjoy them in their own right during my lifetime, but I hope that my actions now will help ensure their vitality 7 generations ahead. And so if we use that as the measuring stick, especially when there are big decisions to be made, then it helps. If we're in, for example, a toxic relationship, that toxicity spills into our children, grandchildren, and keeps going down the line. If we're in a healthy relationship, that positivity builds positive self-esteem and coping mechanisms and tools to ensure their well-being 7 generations from now, when no one knows the stories of what we're dealing with. This is why trauma can go ahead generations down the line and make things harder for people. But it's also why when we're dealing with hard times now, when we find healthy ways to deal with that, we can pass resiliency down the line as well. Everything we do now has a huge impact generations down the line. So think of, Gidaanikobijiganug, your line, in the past, who did things to make it possible for you to be here today exactly as you are. All the blessings and all the curses are connected to that. And think about how you're going to carry yourself so that 7 generations from now, you can pass forward as much good as possible and minimize anything negative that you might bequeath to your future generations. So the word again, Anikobijigan. Indaanikobijigan means my line, Indaanikobijigan means your line. And think in terms of your line, the 7 generations. Miigwech. Thanks for watching today. I'm Anton Treuer. Let's keep in touch. I'm active on social media, and my website has lots of information on my books, speaking engagements, free Ojibwe language resources, resources for teachers, and more. Miigwech.